Welcome into the official. We've got a great show for you this week after a nice restful Christmas and New Year's break. We are bringing you the 3-star series here. So in January, maybe bleeding a little bit into February, we're going to tell you the best 3 stars that we think are in the 2024 class. So this week, we're going to start with quarterbacks. We're going to go in our favorite 3-star quarterbacks. I think everyone's got about 4 or 5 guys. So you're going to get about 15 names here of 3-star quarterbacks to keep an eye on. And without further ado, this is the official. All right. Good evening, fellas. It's through the holidays. We're into the doldrums of winter now. But fortunately, we have plenty of recruiting news, updates, and things to look at to keep us warm. And, the great thing is recruiting is just truly a year-round situation. Tonight we're talking 3-star QBs, but right now all the practices for the Under Armour, I don't know if it's Under Armour, the All-American, one of the All-American games are going on today, this whole week. I guess the game is on Saturday. Then we'll have to talk about that. So there's just always something with recruiting. Makes it very easy to have a year-round show, which is what we're bringing you guys. You guys ready to get into some 3-star QBs, though?
Yep.
All right. So before we get started, of course, got to remind you to go check out homefieldapparel.com. I know football season is about over. We're going to have the national championship between Michigan and Washington next Monday. However, they have apparel for all your favorite schools and honestly just cool stuff to wear with really fun logos. A lot of times going back into the history of these schools, and they have anything from Colorado School of Mines to Michigan, one of the oldest and most storied programs in college football, and everything in between. So homefieldapparel.com, go check it out. Shirts, pants, sweatshirts, hoodies, hats. And if it's your first time buying something from them, type in Campus to Canton. That's with the number 2, and you'll get 15% off your first purchase. And then also, of course, check out campustocanton.com, our parent website that basically fuels the official here on YouTube or podcast that you're listening to. If you haven't been there yet, shame on you. Honestly, at this point, you really should be going to the website. But they have, we've got all sorts of tools to help you with college fantasy football. Everything that we're doing is basically fueled by that site, and all the tools and data that we have there is informing a lot of our decisions that we talk about here on this. Everything from college fantasy football to the NFL side, starting as little as $2.99 per month over at campustocanton.com. So go check that out. All right, with the business out of the way, let's get into some recruiting talk. And, this is honestly really fun time of year for me. I love talking about 3 stars. We'll probably go through the G5 lists later in the winter time here, but we all have about 5 guys, and I think these guys are fun. I think you can really throw out the window here for expectation of maybe true NFL potential, but these are guys we think are fun, and obviously with a fantasy lens, guys we think can contribute on a college fantasy football team. Now I'd like to turn back the clock a little bit here, guys, and you see here on the Google Doc that I feel like we've had some hits. When you're limiting just to 3 stars only, you're taking away a lot of the guys that most sites and everything are saying are the best players. But we've identified some players that have gotten on the field in their first 2 years. Matt, I know you like Josh Hoover, and he started this year for TCU. So in his second year, he's already starting for at least half the season. Do you want to talk a little bit, just remind the people what you liked about him coming out?
What was he one of my picks? If he was, I don't recall.
Yours, Alfred, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was yours.
No, I actually watched the video. You must have come around on him at some point because you did talk about Josh Hoover, but kind of a pocket passer. He did start for TCU this year as a second-year player, 62% completion, 15 touchdowns, 9 picks. He didn't blow the doors off anything, but I think if these guys are getting on the field, we did a pretty good job identifying them. That means at the very worst, they're too deep and get on the field with an injury or earn the starting job. MJ Morris is now in the transfer portal. He was one I think David had picked out. And he looked pretty good, played as a true freshman for NC State, played again this year, and now is in the transfer portal. Presumably will go somewhere to start. We had Connor Harrell, who started the bowl game for UNC after sitting behind Drake May for 2 years. And he is, by all, information I can find, is expected to start in year 3 for UNC next year. Obviously, we know that offense can put up big numbers. And finally, the biggest hit so far, I think, Thomas Castellanos. And he's a guy who went to UCF, sat for a year, played very sparingly, and then transferred to Boston College, where he earned the starting job this year. He was suspect as a passer, 15 touchdowns, 14 picks. That's really not what you want to see from the passing game. But the guy ran for over 1,000 yards, and I don't know where he finished as a QB in fantasy, but he ran for over 1,000 yards. I'm presuming he was a startable fantasy football QB for sure, playing for Boston College this year, going for 1,000 yards on the ground. And we like to see that, and that was always part of the expectation with Castellanos. And then the ones from last year, unfortunately, nobody saw the field. We picked out 6 QBs last year of 3-star, and none of them played very much at all this year. So jury's out, still waiting for that. Although going down the list, a lot of them sat behind like established starters, which, makes some sense. They were unable to get on the field. So tonight, I've done quite a monologue here. Sorry, guys. But tonight, we're going to list about 15 guys. So hopefully we'll keep track of them, and we will see some of these guys on the field maybe as early as this year. David, starting with you, just for fun. No real order here, everyone. So if you're watching or listening on the podcast, is not in rank order. These are just all these guys we like for one reason or another. So, David, let's talk about Alesio Miljevich, I believe is what it would be pronounced. And obviously really fun name. You think he's a fun player. He is committed to Michigan State. Big guy, 6'3", 220. And go ahead and tell us what you like about him.
So he's like a coach's kid type guy. All right, so this throw right here travels around 58 yards. So his max velocity, though, is only 46. So it suggests he has a noodle. I don't know. He doesn't really throw a lot of lasers. He's kind of more of like a finesse touch guy. Throws the open space here. He's kind of a ball placement, accuracy type guy. He can fit it into some tight windows too. But I think he's pretty good recognizing, defenses pre-snap. Kind of always knows where the safety is, and he can like layer, put it in the hole. But I think he's going to be kind of a coach's pet type guy, like a really intangibles sort of guy. Like he's not. This is a guy. I'm trying to stray away from like the super flashy guys a little bit. But he's more of like a steady, reliable type guy. I don't know if he's gonna. You never really know in the landscape right now if he'll actually start at Michigan State or whatever. He might actually be like the backup, like behind Aiden Chili's, but like they don't really. I don't know if they really have anyone after him, so he actually could immediately be the backup. So I don't know. Maybe there could be some opportunity there, but yeah, just sort of a steady Eddie guy that I think could start at some point for someone.
I mean, with it, when you're talking about you're limiting your scope to only 3 stars. I mean, I think that's if you think he can start at all at some point, that's not it's not a half bad bet to make. But you said not flashy, but his numbers are incredible. His senior year, 73% completion, 10 yards per attempt, 137 QBR. Those are all fantastic numbers. And then even chipped in 331 and 9 on the ground. So I mean, certainly not a 0. Kind of on the ground, and that suggests at least some functional athleticism. All right, Matt, moving over to you, a guy who he was on my radar. I did not select him as my final 5, but man, I think this guy could be really good. And diving in a little bit today, preparing for this, I think you probably found one of the better guys on that we'll talk about tonight. So let's go into Jaden Glasser, headed to, what is it, Central? It's one of the Michigans. Central Michigan. Central Michigan. So tell us about him.
Yeah, he kind of came on my radar pretty late here. but I think he really checks a lot of boxes for us. I was able to get his ball velocity around 56 miles per hour, which is one of the highest in the class. I believe second highest currently. So he definitely has that physical upside. He's a big guy, 6'2", 230. And he's a pretty good, powerful runner on top of it. He's not going to shake anybody open field, but he's definitely going to get a good amount of goal line work, I'd imagine. I don't know necessarily how much we love the Central Michigan spot, but I don't think they've really gotten anybody to his talent level, at least as a passer. I know we like Bert Emanuel, but he didn't really show off his arm that great this year. So, and 2 classes apart, I believe, or 1 class. So I'm not too worried about that. Pretty good stats this year: 61% completion, 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I'm pretty surprised he didn't get more offers, honestly, just because the physical profile alone, stats to back it. I think he was pretty good on the 7v7 scene, and just going to camps for college programs, he looked good there too as well. So kind of a question mark for me there, why? But I think he's probably my favorite guy that I'm going to talk about tonight. So definitely something on your radar.
Yeah, I really like that. I think, like you said, I mean, there's not going to be tons of competition. We do like Bert Emanuel. That was always for his athletic rushing ability, which he has already showcased even as a true freshman, I think 2 years ago. Or was it? It was 2. He's been there for 2 years, I believe. And then Jace, the guy who is playing quarterback, Jace Bauer, is transferred, I believe. So, it's either going to be like Bert Emanuel Wildcat all day, or, this guy could have an opportunity early. And you mentioned the velocity. You have the top 2 velo guys in the class on your list. If you want to know Matt's type, it's the big velo, but which makes sense. But yeah, I think that does suggest, real potential. If he shows something, could be one of the, a guy who starts in the G5 and finishes in the P5. I totally think he smacks a little bit of like a better version of Max Brown, who went to UF, showed a little bit, and then transferred to Charlotte. Just in terms of the size and the kind of that same rushing kind of upside, but then his arm looks much better than Max Brown's was, at least from a velocity standpoint. So I think there's real potential there with him. And all right, so then I will talk about first guy on my list, Jared Hollins. And he's going to South Alabama. Bigger kid, 6'4", tall wise, but only 185. So he's kind of a string bean. But going to an offense we really like, South Alabama. And I know we do like Gio Lopez, who played some games for them this year, played a lot of the bowl game and looked good. And he was, I don't know if we officially cited him on a podcast last year, but certainly was a guy we talked about and liked.
We definitely did. I think he was on either the G5. Oh yeah, he must have been
the G5 show. So we like Gio Lopez a lot, but in the era of the transfer portal and all this stuff, either maybe Gio Lopez is really good and transfers out to an upgrade, or Hollins transfers somewhere if Gio Lopez looks like he's going to play for 3 years. So I'm just betting more on talents. The landing spot's good at South Alabama, but he may not wind up there, I guess. So anyway, this is what he looks like. He's definitely a rushing threat. Ran for 419 yards and 8 touchdowns. Also had 66%, 11.3 yards per attempt, which I like, and 140 QBR, which is like really, really high for any class. The arm showed up with a 49 velo, so that's not like amazing, but he does have a few to the sideline that look like they get there with some zip, and occasionally it looks like he can float him a little bit too. And I mean that not necessarily in a good way, but like some of his balls just kind of float rather than getting there with a lot of urgency. But I think it's certainly good enough for the G5, and a dual threat guy going to a good G5 Sun Belt team. I like that combination, and so that's why Jared Holland makes my list, even sitting behind Gio Lopez for a minute. All right, David, I'm going to give you what you've said is probably one of your favorite guys, I guess. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but Henry Hasselbeck, I'm assuming he's got to be of the QB royalty Hasselbecks. Is that right?
Yeah, he's Matt Hasselbeck's kid.
All right, Matt Hasselbeck's kid. I'm certainly old enough to be seeing the children of guys I grew up with now going to college. It's been happening for a few years now, but it's just like every year there's like 2 or 3. So Henry Hasselbeck, going to UCLA, what do you like?
This is just kind of odd because he's like probably the least focused on football. He plays like every single sport. He's actually like an elite lacrosse player. He's got some, his arm I would say is kind of average. He's a skinny dude, so he's like 6'2", 6'3", 180. But he's got good agility. He's surprisingly athletic. Like I said, he was originally committed to Maryland which is like a powerhouse lacrosse team. He was going to play lacrosse, but then decided against it and he's going to play football instead. So, I don't know, Gatorade Player of the Year in Massachusetts. Surprisingly athletic. I think if he fills out his frame, like his arm will improve. Um, but I imagine he's going to be a pretty smart player. Like he does well against pressure. This is a pretty good run here. You can see he runs in the 4.5s currently. So, and he's got some moves there too. So, um, he's going to UCLA. They like to run their QBs a little bit. So if he can become the starter there, I think he'd be a decent fantasy guy.
Yeah, I think we have his velo at 51 too. I mean, that's definitely not bad. And yeah, surprisingly, I don't know. We didn't watch Matt Hasselbeck and some of the other Tim when they were in high school. I mean, I don't know if they were all athletic, but yeah, certainly was surprised to see him with like 700 rushing yards on the season, and even in those clips there, he does have some scoot to him. All right, going back over to Matt. JD Davis, another one of these. I think we have, I think all of us together have all the directional Michigan schools covered on this list. So I guess they're doing a good job of recruiting some fun QBs or something. But JD Davis going to Western Michigan. Let me find him here. And what do you like about this guy?
Yeah, so he plays at Grayson in Georgia. So right off the bat, he's going against some of the best competition in the country. And he did really well against them this year. I mean, 11-3 record, 70% completion rating, 35 touchdowns, only one interception. And then he's a pretty functional runner on the ground too. Almost 300 rushing yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. So that alone, doing that against such high-level competition is always impressive. I think he really stands out in that, especially these downfield throws. I think he has pretty good ball placement generally. He's a good anticipator. I think he has good poise in the pocket. Which is something, I think could lead him to being someone that could get on the field early there. Commit to Western Michigan, if I didn't say it, which, isn't that amazing of a CFS spot, but they are set to hire a new offensive coordinator. I don't believe they have yet. So I'm hoping for that at least. But, I think he's a guy who's just ready to go, right off the bat. Could be like a second half of the year guy that starts getting rotated in at least, depending how they do there. I don't think they exactly have a stud quarterback in place that I'm aware of. So,
right, totally agree. They haven't had a quarterback for a little while now, but certainly could do some offense. I mean, they had Sky Moore. I think there was who put up a whole lot of yards, and I think there was a guy before Sky Moore, right before that was pretty good. They were a decent offense.
Corey Davis way back.
Corey Davis was way back. There was someone between Davis and Sky Moore, I think. Didn't go to the NFL, but was
I can't recall.
But still, an offense that definitely has potential. And anytime in the MAC, those things could turn over in a season, and all of a sudden you've got a great offense. So that is certainly an interesting one. I like him too. I'm going to go with another MAC QB, Caleb Osborne, who's probably might be one of the biggest guys on this list. 6'4", 200, but actually looks a little bit bigger than that. Maybe it's just the rest of his team looks small. But he's going to Toledo, who has guys on the roster. The DeQuan Finn's in the portal. He's been their starter for 2 or 3 years now. Really good dual threat, excellent fantasy quarterback in that offense. And they've got a guy who started the bowl game, didn't do terrible, but I'm sure it'll be an open competition, and Osborne could be a guy who comes on second half of the season, like you just mentioned, for Davis. But yeah, he's a big kid. His numbers are obscene as a senior. He went for 73% completion, 11.5 yards per attempt, 139 QBR, and get this, 1,800 rushing yards and 25 rushing touchdowns. That's in one season. Absolutely bonkers stuff on the ground. He is absolutely going to be a threat on the ground. His arm isn't shockingly good. I think it's like somewhere in the high 40s of a velo that we've got him. Oh no, 52 velo. That's not too bad. It doesn't look super strong. Some of these throws I do think kind of float a little bit. I'd like to see him get to the sideline with more zip. But, all the tools here, including landing spot and conference in the MAC, to just be a very strong CFF guy, should he get a chance to start. So very, very interesting player. And even a guy that, if you hear at some point in the middle of the season or heck, even in spring, he comes in and they're like, wow, this guy's a guy. I mean, I wouldn't hesitate to draft him actually late in a CFF draft just because that offense is awesome. And will probably continue to be. All right, moving on to David. We got going real deep in our bag here, a preferred walk-on. David's going to talk about it here. So let us know about Anthony Rizak. I guess that's how you say it.
Yeah, this is a questionable pick, but I don't know. I kind of think it's fun. Like, he's a preferred walk-on Notre Dame. I obviously think he's just gonna like develop there for a couple of years and then just transfer and try to get a starting job somewhere. But he was the Gatorade Player of the Year, Mr. Football in Nebraska. Like, I don't know, he's 6'3", 195, like pretty big frame. Like, he's gonna probably get to like 220. Like, has probably like an average arm right now, but I think he can get it stronger. He's got pretty good footwork there. You see him kind of sliding to his left pretty effortlessly, makes this guy miss. So he's got some dual threat ability. 900 yards rushing, 15 TDs on the ground, efficient passer, 73% completion percentage. So I don't know. I think I think he could have been like a G5 guy for sure. Like, that's kind of I'm hoping he kind of eventually transfers down after a little bit of development and becomes a starter somewhere.
Yeah, that's deep from left field, but I don't mind it. And watching a little of his clips today after I saw that name, a lot of times with these guys who you consider big time runners, he had like service academy offers and some Ivy League offers. So he elected a preferred walk on to Notre Dame, but like I was like, oh man, he's not going to have any arm whatsoever. But the arm doesn't look bad, to be honest. Like, the motion's pretty slick. Does not look uncomfortable throwing the ball. Some of these guys who end up going to like Air Force and stuff like do not look like they can throw the ball at all. So pretty interesting guy there. Obviously they have CJ Carr coming in, who's expected to be the guy, but with injuries and you just never know what's going to happen. Maybe he's an interesting name to file away. All right, let's go to Matt, who I think next on the list is going to be the biggest arm in the class that we have registered. And that is Dion Battisti. Tell us about this guy going to Wyoming, not usually a place where you want the QB for fantasy purposes, but Josh Allen went to Wyoming, so you never know.
Yeah, this is definitely not that much of a CFF bet. And honestly, it probably won't be that great of a Devy bet. But, the upside with him is, I think, incredibly high. You can see in the clips, laser arm. Unfortunately, his high school career, statistically wise, has not been too good. As a junior, he was only like a 42% completion rate passer. This year, 51 completion, so he did get a little bit better. 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, negative 114 rushing yards. Normally, I wouldn't go out to bat for a player like this, but he is playing in a wing T offense on a team that did not win a single game this year. So I think he legitimately is out there with no help. He's obviously not that developed already. So definitely not someone that I would expect to start, the first 2 years for sure. But I think the upside there is extremely enticing. His arm is bigger than some of these top guys, and like Rayola, Lagway. They both have really high-end arms. I'm able to get even higher with him. So I think that upside alone is enticing. It's a total boomer bust. He has a long way to go to be developed. So yeah, it's just hopefully a potential slam dunk pick, but it probably won't be.
Yeah. Well, everything about it is very interesting. The Wyoming landing spot, among other things, winless as a senior. So we can't even say, well, he's a winner. But I mean, I'm rooting for it. That would be very fun. And, Josh Allen, I don't think was that great in high school either and had a cannon of an arm. Who knows? Who knows? The whole wing T thing, maybe getting a real offense and we can have some fun there. All right.
You heard it. Next Josh Allen.
You heard it here first, folks. All right. So I'm going to go with Caleb McCreary, a guy out of the state of Alabama who's committed to Troy, which is an interesting landing spot, honestly, because the guy that's been there for like 6 years is now can't play anymore. I don't think he can play anymore, Gunnar Watson. And so there's going to be an opening here at Troy. They may get a transfer, who knows what. But this kid is an extremely fun runner. You can see here he's like juking guys on the backfield. He's very electric on the ground. Ran for 1,100 yards and 24 touchdowns as a senior this year. The arm's a little suspect. I think we don't have a velocity, but it looks a little loopy at times. But sometimes he can really gun it in there. It's just a little inconsistent. A smaller guy, 5'11", 180, 64% on the season, 10 yards per attempt with 126 QBR. So all those numbers and efficiency look pretty good. Smaller guy, G5 is probably the perfect place for him unless he turns out to be an absolute terror on the ground. And, like a Tommy Castellanos potentially, who succeeded reasonably well in the P5. But I think G5 is a great place for him to start. And certainly a guy like a Castellanos that if he gets a chance and is putting up big ground numbers can be a fantasy starter pretty quickly. All right, David, moving all the way down. Alonzo Contreras, a guy I actually have been eyeing. When we put these 3-star lists together, there's a lot of guys that don't make the cut, but he was definitely on my short list of interesting players. Headed to San Jose State. Tell us about the 5'11", 180-pound Contreras.
Yeah, this is my classic, smaller G5 quarterback, underdog quarterback type guy I like to bet on just for fun. He's like I like these fun, small, twitchy guys. They're just fun to me. I think he can run. You can see he's like a pretty decent runner. He's got some agility to him. But like his rushing stats aren't impressive. I think he usually runs to throw type guy. Like he's just going to extend plays and try to look for someone downfield. But I don't know. San Jose State, I honestly, I didn't think about the landing spot too much. Like Siobhan Cordero was pretty good there. Maybe not so much last year, 2 years ago at least, when he had like Elijah Cooks. I remember Elijah Cooks was a pretty good receiver for them. But I think he's going to be like 25 this coming year. And I think then he's out the door. And then after that, I'm not really sure. So I don't know. Maybe he'll compete for the starting job after he leaves.
Yeah, he's a fun guy. I like that nice compact motion. Looks like he can get the ball there. That one throw was like, I feel like it was like 50 yards in the air. I think it was like second throw on that clip. Pretty impressive stuff. All right, Matt, you're next with a guy that we don't have any stats for. Adrian Posi going to UAB, although we do have good velo on him. So what do you like about Posi?
Yeah, he's probably the guy with the best offer list that we'll talk about tonight. He's been offered by Georgia, Ohio State, LSU, Notre Dame, Texas A&M. I doubt most of them are acceptable at this point. I think a lot of them came from either sophomore or junior year, but he is signed and ready to play UAB, which was a pretty awesome CFF spot with Jacob Zeno there last year. I can't imagine they'll recruit over him. He has a really high-end arm, 54 ball velocity. I think his release is really quick as well. Like you said, unfortunately, no stats on him. There's no senior tape either, except for one game against Chaminade, Madonna, and he looked all right in it. It's really hard to tell just from one game's worth of like 5 plays. So, and with no stats available on it either. But yeah, I think he's just a good quarterback. Good upside on top of it, going to a great CFF system. Not something they question too much.
Yeah, I mean, Trent Dilfer had a nice offense in high school in Nashville where he coached, and then kind of got a surprise offer for UAB, and went down to coach UAB. I think this was his first season at UAB or second.
I think it's first.
I think it's first too. So and Zeno went from a guy who historically, I'm just looking at it right now, had never really played a whole lot, but basically career sub 60% completion percentage and limited action. And then 73% this year, 8.2 yards per attempt. Really nice season for UAB, like you said. So I think Trent Dilfer, that's a fun offense and probably something for a long time we thought of them as just ground and pound, play defense. But UAB might need to be, a system that we think about off as a decent offense, which is kind of a new thought, I feel like, for UAB, other than the historic. They've had a bunch of running backs for a while, but, maybe the passing game now is going to flourish. All right, I'm going to Tucker Parks, a guy out of the state of Texas. He is committed to Western Kentucky, which obviously we love. Western Kentucky still not as good as the year before, but still a place that we really like for offense. And he is 6'2", 195. He has some really nice numbers, 66%, 11.1 yard per attempt, 119 QBR, but had 132 as a junior. I think he got injured a little bit as a senior, but that's a nice on the throw on the run there, putting it really with the receiver in stride to catch it. He can also run here. Look at this, designed QB power basically, and then takes it outside and is beating safeties to the end zone. I mean, that is pretty impressive. He can absolutely get it done on the ground and seems to have a pretty nice arm. And we don't have velo on him, but seems to have a pretty solid arm. Played in Texas, and I like all those kind of check boxes. But then also the tape to me is pretty fun. The offensive landing spot is pretty fun. And I think Austin Reed's got to be done. So, open season at the Western Kentucky quarterback position. All right, going, I guess David never found a fifth guy, was being too hard on himself. But we'll go to Matt for his fifth and final. A guy I like. I just honestly kept him off because of stature, which is dumb because who cares about this right now? But DJ Bailey, very fun player. Did he go to DeSoto High, right? So he's been throwing to Dante Cook the year prior, and I think they've got some pretty good receivers over there. But what do you like about this 5'11", 220-pound stout quarterback?
Yeah, I think he kind of falls in a similar bucket for me as Mika Alejado and Darius Curry, where if he was, 3 inches taller, then he'd probably be playing P4 ball next year. But unfortunately, he just isn't. So it's just how it is. He's a 2-time state champion at DeSoto. DeSoto just had an undefeated season this year. 68% completion rating, 3,300 yards, 44 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. It doesn't get that much better. It doesn't get much better than that playing, high-end Texas ball. He definitely has good pieces around him still, but it's still a lot to be that efficient, at that level. Going to Sam Houston State, which wasn't exactly an awesome spot last year, but they were 13th most in pass attempts last year. That probably has a little bit due to being behind in games and passing the second half, but still they want to pass the ball. It seems like. I can't imagine they have anybody that much better than him, so he could be a year 2 starter, I would hope at least. So he's definitely more of a CFF Dynasty style pick that I might be taking at the end of startup drafts.
Yeah, 146 QBR really does not get much better than that. I mean, I don't know what the absolute max is, but that's one of the higher ones I even listed on this whole sheet. So pretty interesting guy, and he's small, but he can run, and he's thick, 220 pounds. So that's a really interesting pick. And then I'm going to go with my final guy here, and he's continued to just be one of my favorite QBs in the class. Jace Stucky, headed to an offensive, kind of a wasteland of Eastern Michigan. And we don't have a velo, but this guy looks like he's got legitimate arm strength. I really like his motion, and he really does seem to fire some balls in there. Like that right there is just, that ball gets there quick. Sometimes these can be deceiving, but, without the actual velo. But that's a big time throw, cross all the way to the sideline there. I think he's got a legit arm. He's 6'3", 185, 72% completion, 11.8 yards per attempt. And I didn't write down his rushing, but I know he's a legitimate rushing threat as well. So he's kind of like all the boxes checked. He's going to the MAC. And if I had a velo number at 54 or better, I'd be like, I think he's got, P5, P4 graduation potential. He just looks like he's got a lot of tools. Very fun player, easy arm action, gets the ball there, and can get it done on the ground. So a guy, based on what I'm seeing and based on what I know about Eastern Michigan's QB room, I think he's a guy who could play pretty quickly. Now, obviously, I don't know for a fact his ability to read defenses and stuff like that. That's kind of difficult to tell from high school highlights, but I think there's a lot of potential with those tools for Jay Stucky. All right. I guess that does it. We're right about 35 minutes, so that's good. That's a lot of names. Most of these guys are G5. And, we're going to be hoping for success and, that upgrade to P5 if we really are thinking about Devi potential. But otherwise, I think all these guys can be very fun for your CFF. And, it really can't be overlooked that on the college fantasy side of a C2C league, you're going to rotate QBs in the G5 level because the scoring is just obscene. So, unless you have you're lucky enough to have Jaden Daniels, a lot of times your best starters in the college fantasy side are going to be in the G5 ranks. So don't overlook them. They are easy to pick up on waivers late in drafts, depending on how many rounds you draft, but certainly guys who you should have as a watch list on waivers. When you hear they're starting, pick them up. And that can happen, honestly, any week of the year, of the season. So I think these names are very good to file away, even if you're not going to be drafting them on your supplemental draft day. Guys, thanks a lot. A lot of great names, a lot of fun players here. And we will probably break next week, do a all-star game review, and then we'll be back the next week after that with 3-star running backs, which I've already got my list going, and it's a lot more P5. So that will be fun. P4, I guess. Now it's P4. So all right, gentlemen, thanks a lot. Have a great night. This is The Official.